into the game that everyone's talking about right now. Number 4 Florida State defeats Clemson 31-24 in overtime in Death Valley. They break all these streaks. They beat Clemson for the first time since 2014. They beat Clemson for the first time in Death Valley since, what was it? I don't even know.
13.
13? Oh, 2013, duh. I do know that game. And Clemson's first conference loss at home since Pittsburgh in 2016. All these streaks, right? Florida State remains, they're going to remain in the top 5, and their season and a perfect season stays alive for the Noles. Yeah, they might be number 1. So I think, let's just start with what happened, Mac. We called this, and I'm not going to tap ourselves in the back because Clemson just keeps doing this. I mean, it is what it is. The turnover where Cade was sacked, the scoop and score for Florida State, completely and utterly changed the game. Clemson was probably going to go up at least 10, maybe 14. And so that's a 10 or 14-point swing the other way. Massive. Florida State made it happen. That was a massive sack by Deloach. And FSU scores. Give FSU credit. But you said it, Mac. There's going to be a play in this game, most likely a turnover, that is going to change the game. And that's what happened.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, it's when you're playing a game of this magnitude, that's just kind of how it goes. When you're playing where teams are so evenly matched, there's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of, again, streaks, as you said, kind of mental hurdles. An away team playing against a nuts crowd, which you were there, and you said that environment was
environment was really, really, really good, really loud
for a noon game, which is great and awesome. So it comes down to just a couple plays, and it always does. In games like this, especially one score games, and unfortunately that was it, and it happened to Clemson, and it's so funny, KG, even you and I going back and forth on this before, and just hearing different people in Twitter, of course, all the great coaches that are out there on Twitter. We have no clue. Like, a lot of people are mad at Maffa, a lot of people are mad at Cade, whatever, for that sack fumble. And to be quite frank, without us being in that meeting room, we have no clue. I don't know if that was Maffa's guy. To me, it looked like he was looking left the whole time.
Yeah.
By that kind of design, makes me think that Cade has to throw hot off that guy. And you just never saw him. And it was a perfect hit. The way he disguised it, I mean, Deloach literally came from 8 yards deep and just head sprint missile straight, head to ball, right on the shoulder, was a beautiful hit. And then the ability to pick it up, scoop and score from however many 60 yards out was just
that's so hard to do, right, Mac? I mean, you have to have the wherewithal. The ball's out. Where is it? Grab it. Go. It's impressive.
Well, and it's what's crazy is everybody was clearing out, on this passing tree. So there's nobody around. Right. And it wasn't just jump on the ball. I mean, you saw 3 Noles try to scoop and score. Like, they're thinking points. They're not thinking just get the ball. They want to score, and that's exactly what they did there. So a massive play that totally changed the game, just sucked the momentum back in, because Clemson was about to go ahead by 2 touchdowns. I mean, they were on the 40-yard line, their plus yardage, maybe a little more.
No, even more, because Maffa just had that huge run. I mean, Mac, it sucked the air out of that stadium.
Yeah, I can't
completely. Oh man.
Imagine. So, that was something that you and I talked about, and we knew that, unfortunately, that's what it probably was going to come down to. Either team. I didn't know who it was going to happen to or what was going to happen. But it's been a trend, for Clemson these last, handful of games when they do lose. And so it's something that, again, the attention to detail, the margin of error is razor thin in this type of deal and when you're playing in these type of games.
Yeah, and you still had a chance to win it afterwards. You, of course, missed the field goal, which everyone knows that story. I know I didn't watch the broadcast, but they were talking about it so much on the broadcast. So you missed that field goal. And, Mac, when you look at the box score, you outgained Florida State by over 100 yards. You have 9 more first downs. You hold Florida State to 22 rushing yards. That was really interesting. FSU could not run the ball at all. You have the ball for nearly 35 minutes, and you lose. I think the turnover, of course, was one of the main reasons, but also just in the big moments, there were kind of some bonehead mistakes. Can you explain on that 3rd and 1 in overtime? People are mad at Cade. People are mad at, but he has the option to check out of the run. So what do you think happened there?
Yeah. First of all, I do want to address the kick because.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Really leading into the kick, I have issues with kind of all of it. So, again, Clemson driving, like marching down the field, calling some aggressive plays, moving the ball, and then gets to, like the 11, 12, whatever it was, yard line, and it was like,
Conservative. Yeah.
let's be careful, and which I think that loses you football games. And it wasn't even the conservative. It was a little weird. Like the fake double reverse pass was strangely timed. Uh, Total whiff by the right tackle. Defensive end almost hits Cade right in the face, almost picks it.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what is that? And then you got a quarterback draw. You're not giving it to Moffer or Shipley, your best players, not forcing it downfield. So I thought that the conservative nature of that was strange, to put all that pressure on a young man who literally has been at the beach for a
Right.
year, who's been on the team for 4 days. I mean,
He had gone 3 for 3 with field goals and extra points.
I don't.
But yeah, he just joined the team 5 days ago. Like,
Not
we
a
really want to put the game in his hands.
not a good idea, I didn't think. And then of course misses it. I thought that was crazy. And then overtime. Here's the deal. And a lot of people again are mad at Cade about this, and he's in his fifth start. He's a young guy. If you call an RPO read, screen read, he's going to do what he's practiced his entire career. If he looks to the left and sees there are 2 defensive backs and 3 wide receivers, his entire career he's been told, throw the ball.
Yep.
If you don't want him to throw the ball, do not call that. Do not tag it. Why would you ever do that? Why would I ever even want that action over there? And then number 2, why would I want a 230-pound wide receiver catching the ball, not blocking? Why wouldn't I want Tyler Brown, who's our shiftiest – Howard, look at me, I'm getting upset. The shiftiest receiver Clemson has had in a long time, like twitchy, different guy. Why wouldn't you want the ball?
He was great, by the way.
Was great. Why wouldn't you want the ball in his hand and let that 230-pound guy block? All of that makes absolutely no sense. Totally on the coaches, in my opinion. They're the ones being paid millions of dollars. They're the ones that are making that decision.
True.
Run the football. And you even see Coach Sweeney say, we needed 1 yard. Don't call it. And again, don't know if he called that. Don't know if Riley called it. Don't know anything about that. But don't put a young kid in that position. That's not a fourth-year veteran. That's a fifth-game player. It's just it was a horrible decision. And then, of course, on the 4th down, I think it got tipped. Could you tell?
Yeah.
It got tipped before it got to Boca.
I think it did, yes.
And the game's over. And that's what I guess is the most frustrating part to me is and again, of course, this is a Clemson person saying this, it felt like Clemson lost. It did not feel like FSU won.
It did, yeah.
Clemson put itself in the worst possible situation to win the game. They didn't put themselves in position to win the game. So I think that's why it was so frustrating. And again, KG, this is from more of a fan perspective for me. When I look at it and I switch the hat and I put on the analyst hat, this was by far not even close the best that I've ever seen Clemson play
For sure.
in the last 2.5 years. Like they're played at such a high level, ran the ball effectively, threw the ball effectively, Cade dicing them up, made great decisions all day. And then it just stinks that it comes to this one little point that you would hope that people would put a young man in a better situation. So I think that if you can take away the emotion, which is hard to do in this moment, maybe by Wednesday or Friday you can. I think that we saw Clemson play out of its mind, play really, really well, and how can they build on it? So if you're positive, how can they win the rest of the games this year? And now I think you're in a tough spot too if you're Clemson, because the ACC championship is not in your control. You have to have a lot happen. A lot of people lose.
So you got to stay motivated. That's on the coaches too. That's going to be a challenge for them.
It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. And, how can those leaders step up? It's almost like that Tim Tebow moment where you have somebody stepping up saying, you'll never see a team be more dedicated than us. Because you have to. If not, who knows what could happen? The rails could fall off. Because there's some really good teams that you have to play coming up very quickly.
For sure.
Syracuse.
Yeah, that's Syracuse is licking their chops with that. I think the way you explained that Cade play was really, really good, just to kind of give us a little more insight there. And we've said this too, at some point, it's no longer fluky. It's kind of who you are, that one of these big mistakes is going to happen. And Clemson has to get over that hurdle.
Yep.
But to your point, if you're just looking at it from a pure football perspective, this is the best game that Clemson has played in a pretty long time. And I thought the defense also if not for kind of that first drive after the half, which, by the way, no fans were back for that drive. So that was interesting because Clemson, you can pass out and go back to your tailgate.
Right.
A lot of that stadium was pretty empty on that first drive.
Right.
Everyone came back eventually, but that was interesting. If not for a few drives, this defense overall looked pretty good. And we're going to get to the Florida State side of this, I promise. But I think you can take a lot of positives from Clemson's defense too, Mac. The secondary, I thought that's the best game the secondary had played in quite some time.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I mean, the way that they were playing, I mean, not lockdown, but lockdown. Like I understand that Johnny and
Keon made 2 massive plays.
Yeah, and when you look at him, he was kind of running free. I mean, he got lost in the sauce. There was one where he had this nice, big, long. It wasn't a bender, but it kind of was. And I don't know what Nate Wiggins was doing. I don't know if it was man to man, but he kind of dropped out. I think he saw somebody go vertically, so he left him. So Keon's just butt naked for 38 yards downfield, wide open. And literally the way it happens, Johnny was running something. Johnny turns into a lead blocker instantly. That was just a great play by them. And then another, I can't remember the other big pass that he had outside.
There's a play, and I've seen it kind of slow-moed on Twitter, where I think this was the overtime touchdown, where he almost hesitates for a second.
Oh, it's like it's like a shooter coming off.
Yes. It gave me shooter vibes, like coming off a curl or something where you kind of hesitate, and then he cuts across the middle, and Clemson just comes. It was well done by Florida State. Clemson just lost him.
Yeah, that was in regulation. That was his first touchdown.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm getting it all mixed up. Yeah.
It was a basketball player going to get an alley-oop. So great plays, but you probably expected those guys to make more, based on
I did.
Clemson historically, and thought they did great. Both those guys, 5 catches each. Jaheim Bell had 3 catches for like 20 yards. I thought that Clemson had a great plan defensively, got after Jordan Travis, sacked him, I think 3 times, maybe 2 or 3 times, pressured him a ton. I thought Xavier Thomas played his best game of his career. And those guys made it difficult. Linebackers flying around, Axeman, and again, to hold them. If you would have told me, Saturday morning, FSU's only going to have 22 rushing yards, I would say Clemson won by maybe a lot. Because they weren't able to go. And it's so similar to that Duke game. If you tell me Riley Leonard doesn't have a passing touchdown, I think Clemson blows them out. And, it's just not the case. Teams finding a way to win. So very encouraged by that. Again, I know the scoreboard, not what Clemson fans want to hear maybe right now. But, again, I think you should be encouraged by your team. Maybe now we talk about Florida State.
Let's talk about the Seminoles, because to have a great season, to have a playoff-type season, win the league, you have to find ways to win, because you're not going to have your A game every single time. You're just not. And on the road, it's even more difficult. Florida State played a lot better than they did at BC, but they didn't make any mistakes, no turnovers in that regard. Still not its best game, but, and Mac, you made this point about BC. Last year, they lose the BC game. Last year, they probably lose this game.
Yeah.
But there's something about the leadership, just making enough plays, almost have a kind of team of destiny type feel. And right. Jordan Travis stuck in there. They didn't get the ball a lot in the first half. Jordan Travis was kind of just sitting on the sideline. He did not make mistakes. And in the second half, when his team needed him, he made the plays that you needed. He looked like, and we talked about this too, he looked like the veteran. Jordan Travis was not going to be rattled.
Yeah. And it takes that, right? Like to learn hard lessons in a win is an amazing opportunity. It is an amazing thing. And now 2 weeks in a row, Florida State has had to find a way. How can we do it? Whatever it takes, let's find a way to win. If that's, being up 21 and then having to rally to finish a game, if it's being down by a touchdown and they're driving and my goodness, we're about to be down 14. What can we do? Defense makes a crazy play. And then everything you said about Jordan Travis, I mean, that dude is so good, so freaky. Again, going against that environment, going against these werewolves on defense, and just staying in there time and time again, delivering strikes, delivering big plays. He's a special dude. These players are special. The confidence and culture that Coach Norvell has built so fast is it's just fun to watch. It really is. And, for us, obviously, covering this league as a whole, to have a team in the fight right now, we still have a handful. Think about this.
Game day's going to Duke, Mac.
Hey, think about this in years past. If Clemson is struggling, it's like the season's over. It's like, well, okay, no postseason for us. And, we got a lot of opportunity, and obviously Florida State is well in front of that charge, leading the way. But I thought that they looked like, again, that team of destiny where they found it, they got it
Find a
done.
way.
And for Jordan to become the all-time leading touchdown scorer for Florida State, I thought was maybe not poetic justice, but it was very epic, hero-like the way that it happened. Walk off in overtime to win the game there, and they're a great team. They're a very good team, and you can't make mistakes if you want to beat them. Will be interesting. How do they rally? Because this is it's not quite like NC State a couple of years ago when they won at home, but it is this like big peak
Yeah.
your journey. Like
But they have a bye week. They have a bye week this week.
you get a rest, you get a chill, you get to
Yeah.
get back together. But it is kind of this mountain peak that you got to, knowing there's others ahead. How do they get back to that climb, kind of to steal their mantra there and put their head down and understand that at the end of the day, if you want to win a national championship, this is just a blip on your schedule. This is just a small thing, which you celebrated all that, but we got to keep going. We got to go to what's next. You get this recovery. I'm pulling up their schedule now, and we've got Virginia Tech. You've got them back home. You've got 3 home games in a row.
3 in a row, yeah.
Continue to channel that. You've got a really good Syracuse team, then a really good Duke team. So challenge is still far and wide for this team, but man, they look great. Bracket hasn't come out yet. Oh, my computer's going crazy. Or the bracket, I'm thinking March Madness over here. The poll hasn't come out yet, but I think this team has solidified themselves as the number 1 team in the country. Who has better wins?
No, nobody
wins. It's just, I hate the AP poll enough, but they should be number 1.
It'll be interesting to see nationally how much credit Florida State gets for this win. If you watched the game, which some people firing off transfer portal takes who didn't watch the game, obviously. If you didn't watch the game, you might not give FSU as much credit,
right?
Because Clemson looked so much better.
Right.
I mean, it was like Clemson did not look like the team against Duke. But if that's the only Clemson game you've watched, then you might say, oh, it's not that big of a win. But massive win for Florida State. And I kind of like for them that they have the bye week afterwards. So there's no letdown chance, really, because you got the bye week. And then you have Virginia Tech, who's one of the worst teams in the country. So you're not going to lose to them. And then you have Syracuse. And then Duke, Florida State, game of the year. And then, of course, Miami later on and all that. But as we suspected, any concern with the lack of run game for Florida State before we get to these other games?
It's interesting. EJ and I were kind of sitting there looking at each other because I don't know if it was necessarily play design or just what Clemson was doing forced them to do stuff, but it was very hesitant running.
For Florida State.
Yeah, well, even just the style and Trey Benson. I mean, like, normally you see that downhill, down, like speed, and it was kind of tiptoey. I don't know. I think Clemson did obviously a great job, and you're not going to see many defenses like that, until you get to like a playoff or a championship type thing. But I'm not concerned because obviously they won the game. And again, you and I talk about this all the time with balanced teams. If you take something away, do I still have answers? And the answer was yes for Florida State. They could still throw it. So I think I'm paying attention to it. I'm not concerned. I'm paying attention to it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that's fair as well. Okay, by the way, Clemson with Syracuse next week at Syracuse. That is not a gimme for the Tigers, and we will talk much more about that game throughout the week, so stay tuned for that one.